Now from Roger B with a very nice Belgian beer in his photo there. Bigger councils will not get the right results unless you can attract the right people, Ned Manoon. So anyone's able to answer that. Will we get better candidates with bigger councils? I mean, certainly there'd be a filtering process, wouldn't there? I mean, it wouldn't be up to the local branch. There'd have to be a regional grouping, and
I think, Ned,
who would rise to the top in those processes.
Yeah, I think, Ned, you were talking about not just councils there, but staff as well in terms of that one. Yeah,
Staff.
so it works both ways with staff and councils. Yeah.
I mean, it is hard when some small councils have got to employ, you know, the heritage officer 1 day a week and the urban design professional 2 days a week. I mean, I guess you're all fairly large councils. You could see that that's a problem though for smaller entities.
Can I just say, in terms, I can answer that in terms of one of our neighbours, which is Hawkesbury. You know, we share the boundary of Hawkesbury up at Boundary Road there, and you know, we've got to the point where our council, actually 3 years ago, said to Hawkesbury Council, we will loan you some money in order to actually upgrade your side of Boundary Road, and they wouldn't accept it. They said we can't afford it.
Gee, wow.
So you know, we run a joint ferry service across the Hawkesbury from Lower Portland across the other side. And we're having debates with Hawkesbury Council in terms of the hours of operation, because it's a budget. We both share an equal budget, and you know, we're obviously the senior party. We've got the dollars, but Hawkesbury don't have that, right? And so that's where that economies of scale argument comes into play in terms of this particular question.
You raise the issue of boundaries. The Premier said quite recently, it's clear that our system of local government boundaries, dating back to the 19th century, will not be able to meet the needs of growing and changing communities. I mean, these boundaries were set well before we were born. Yes. In some cases, they were set more than a century ago. Isn't it time to have a rational look at where the edges are? Yeah.
Can I go with that in terms of the Hills Council? And we've already adopted a model which is not necessarily a merger model, but we've looked at our greater region, and we've basically said that look, our council boundaries have not changed since 1906. They're the same boundaries there today, and obviously, you know, horses and cars were around that era, and obviously not cars. But we have looked at particular suburbs. My own suburb, I live in Carlingford. Carlingford is split into 3 LGAs. Hills had 60%, Harrow got 30%, and Hornsby got 10%. Now, how do you get planning right across a suburb? You know, when it's got 3 LGAs, you know, split between that. There are councils, there are suburbs which we believe which are adjacent
Sounds like
to
the
us.
occupied territory.
Well, it's a bit like that, and I think it's a fair point in terms of, you know, when you have different development controls, different sets of rules, different apartment heights, all kinds of things going on, and so, you know, even when it comes down to, you know, the differences between, you know, whether we can have a sign outside your business, for example, the rules in Hills might be different in Hornsby, and it may only be, you know, we're talking about different rules from one side of the road to the other. So that kind of thing really needs to be looked at in its entirety. You know, in terms of that, in our own council, we looked very, very closely at some of our adjoining areas, you know, and some of our neighbours won't necessarily like what the model which we're going to come up with. I know Scott and I have a very vehement disagreement over a couple of suburbs in his ward, for example, which we believe are naturally Hills Council areas, not Parramatta Council areas. The same with Hornsby. You know, part of Castle Hill, for example, is in the Hornsby LGA. Now, I don't think anyone in this room would actually, who initially familiar with the area, would actually think, gee, Castle Hill, Hornsby. I don't think anyone would actually get that kind of model. So it's those kind of areas which we need to look at very closely. It's not just about, I said, not just about bolt-on and mergers. It's also about what the boundaries are going to look like in the future. And as David sort of rightly mentioned, it's about, you know, the boundaries were set up in 1906, and they don't reflect the communities of interest for today, and they don't reflect what needs to happen moving forward. So, you know, our model is certainly looking at, you know, communities of interest just as much as mergers and amalgamations.